G'day people, I'm Sharyn. Welcome to my channel. Have you ever wondered if you could do a wedding ring quilt in your embroidery machine? Well, it appears you can. This is my design number 52T, which is here in my 100 design set, which is available from my website, and that will be in the description below. The design is what I'm going to show you how to stitch out, but I'm going to show you both that design and this edge design. By the way, anyone who's purchased my designs in recent times, I forgot to include this in with the sashings. I have now emailed it to everyone except Bev, whose email box was full. So if any of you haven't received it, contact me and I will send it to you again. There's the designs. Let's get started. I'm going to start by hooping up for the wedding ring square. I'm doing this in the 23 centimetre hoop, and I'll start by just laying some fabric. I'm not using fabulous fabric. I don't need more quilts. Allow me to assure you, I do not need more quilts. I'm putting some of this rubberized backing around the hoop because I know that will help the hoop to hold the fabric more solidly. So my hoop is on, and I will add my magnets around that. Next, I need to put in my wadding, and this one I'm going to do a little bit differently to normal. I need 3 layers of wadding in order to get that nice raised effect around the edge. However, I don't need 3 layers of wadding in the middle. So what I want to do is just put some strips of wadding in here that I know will cover most of, if not all of, where the actual wedding ring bit is going to be. But I don't want to have that on top. When the machine is stitching, I don't want the machine coming up to joins in this bit of wadding. So I'm going to put the third piece of wadding as a full piece over the top. And that means I'm able to use some scraps in here. Maybe if you're doing a design that just needs something in the middle, you could just put an extra piece in the middle and then put a bigger piece over the top of it. This sort of thing will help you save a little bit of wadding and also not put you in a situation where you're potentially going to have your sewing machine get caught up in the edges of something. So now I'm going to cut the 2 top layers off. The easiest way to get something out of the middle, pull that up and clip into it. Even though I've just done that, it's probably still possible for me, if I've got it the right way around, to keep that centre bit fairly whole. I'm not getting it out of the hoop. It's important that it stays in the hoop so that everything is in the same place when I take it back to the machine. I may be able to salvage it if it pops out of the hoop a bit, but I'm not guaranteed of getting it back in the same place. That piece could be used in the center of something that needs a small bit, and put a bigger piece over the top of it so nothing will get stuck on that cut. You can see here, they're the extra bits that I put in, and I'm going to just trim them away until we're down to just the bottom layer, and I'll be trimming away the 2 layers on the sides as well. I'll do that and get back to you. Now that I've got that cut away, so there's just the 1 layer of wadding around most of things, 3 layers here and the bits that I want to stand up. And by the way, it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be. Perfection is way overrated. Get it out of your mind that it needs to be perfect. It definitely doesn't need to be. We're all still in the hoop exactly the same way we were at the start, and I'm just going to add my piece of fabric over the top. So I don't need to do anything extra, just babysit it while it stitches this out and then let it go. I've had a play with my lighting in the hope that you can see how much of a difference there is in those areas, how they cast a bit of a shadow, because they are very much thicker. The best way that I've ever seen to sort of show what's going on here is how the ruler can't sit flat on top of it, because this is so much higher than this. When I cut it out, I'm going to cut it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance for these, or just under 1/4 inch, because I don't want very much space between the blocks. And hopefully you're not getting the shine off the ruler with this. So that is how to make wedding ring blocks on an embroidery machine with my design number 52. I don't know if anyone else is making that or has made it, but there you go. Design number 52T of my designs. This is the GR hoop for Janomi's Memory Craft 15,000 machine. It's 23 centimetres, I think that 28 would be the right number, which is a bit over 9 inches by 11.5-ish. It's a big hoop. I'm going to use this one for doing the edge pieces because I can fit 4 edge pieces in here in one hooping. So you can see that it's got 4 places to attach magnets. That's what the silver bits are. And I am going to put 4 magnets on because that will make the hooping up more firm, and I want things firm. The bigger the hoop you're using, the firmer you need to make sure that things are in the hoop, because it's very easy for fabric to slip, particularly around these areas, the long lengths. So there's my back of my hoop. Here's my fabric for the backing. I apologise it's not ironed. I have too much things that I'm trying to do at the moment. Put this in here and I'm going to tighten that up finger tight. As always, don't ever try and go beyond finger tight. You will strip the screws. Now that I've done that, I'm going to take that out and put these in. So I'm going to put one at each end. I've got a couple of longish pieces that I'm going to put down the sides. And part of the reason I'm doing this, and I've already sort of semi-tightened the hoop, is that I know that this way I'll get things tighter and firmer with the hoop in. So that in there. You can see I can still get it in, but it's actually much firmer now. Even there it's moving a bit, but I can put my magnets on. Somebody asked recently about the magnets for a different brand. I don't know. I know the Janomi's. These magnets come in 2 different sizes. There's these bigger ones and there's also some smaller ones. But I don't know how they would fit on other machines, because what size they are between the 2 sides of the plastic will make a huge amount of difference about whether they work. If you've got a different brand of machine, check out whether you can get magnetic strips to help with keeping things firm. Got that there. I'm going to put in 3 layers of wadding, because the design that I'm doing is like the wedding ring. It's going to have the extra bits in the curvy bits, and this is what's going to make it puff up. So I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to stitch out the first part of the design, which is the blue part of the design. And then I'll come back here and cut things away from 2 layers of this. I've now got about 2 minutes of film that I was doing with a different camera, and the sound is lower and it's also filming a screen, and there's a little bit of strobing. If that's going to worry you, please skip ahead 2 minutes to where you can watch the machine stitching out but without having to try and look at a screen. This is what the wedding ring edge piece looks like. I would be doing just one in the middle of a big square, which is useless. So I'm going to play with this now. I'm going to the home screen, the edit screen. I'm going to tell it that I want to do it in a bigger hoop. You may not be able to see what I just pressed there. So I'm going to do it in this hoop. And I've now got the option to actually do more of them. I'm going to move this one right up to the top. I'll do it like that. I am then going to copy it and move it down. I'm going to move this one just slightly below mid-level, and I can copy it again, and this one I'm going to flip so it goes down, and then I'm going to move that one to the very bottom. What I'm trying to do is to make sure that these are far enough apart that when I cut them, I will have the edges that I need between them. So I'm going to go back to this one, copy it to flip, there we go, and then move it down. And I will have these separated, and now I tell it I'm ready to sew that, but if I send that to the machine at the moment, it will do 8 color changes, which I don't want. So I'm going down here to this thing that looks like a bunch of cotton reels. When I press that, the machine is going to work out that they're all in the same order, and it can put them together. So now when it goes to the hoop, it's in 2 colors. Camera decided to not work for me for part of that. So this is what it ended up looking like. I've brought it back to the table. It's all still in the hoop exactly as it was, but I'm now going to cut out the top 2 layers around each of these designs. Only the top 2, the bottom one will be left. And I'm just going to do that through 2 layers for all of these. You may have noticed while this was stitching out at the sewing machine that it stitched in a funny order. It did that one, then that one, then that one, then that one. That's just the order that I put them in when I was in the edit screen, and I could have adjusted it. I didn't think of it. I probably should have had a slightly bigger piece underneath here, but I've got 3 layers in each of these spaces. I needed to make sure there was enough room in between for me to cut out the separate sections. And now all I'm going to do, because this has gone to the machine in the hoop, it's come back here, it's still in the hoop, it's going back to the machine now, still in the hoop, and it's going to have a piece of fabric over the top. Now that weird order that it's stitched out in, if I just go back and stitch, it's going to stitch out in that same order, which I'm not particularly worried about. But I'd really like this piece of fabric to be stitched down in place the whole way around, and I'm going to get the machine to do that for me. I hope I just managed to film me cutting them apart. The camera seems to have decided to do something funny. We'll see in a moment. When I go to separate these, I've got the just under 1/4 of an inch on those edges. I actually want to cut around here. Now I'm just eyeballing this. To make these, I'm actually making it, it's a bit over 1/4 of an inch what I'm doing. What you want to do is determine what size your binding is going to be, and then cut this bit to match your binding. But it's sort of important not to make these edges go in too far. This one you might want to bring it in and join them up a bit closer. And it could perhaps have been a good idea to have left a little bit extra for the corners. But that's really not going to make any difference. If you really, really, really want to, you could put some extra wadding in there and make your binding have some extra wadding. I don't personally see it as hugely important. If that's going to happen, it's going to happen on the 4 corners of the quilt. So if you've got a big quilt, it's only going to be 4 of those spaces that you need to add a little tiny bit extra. Most of the time, these bits are going to be joined end to end. And you actually want that to not be a deep, sharp join in there, because if it's a deep, sharp join, it's hard to get the binding to actually go into it and then come out again. So that's the way these work. If you compare the one I've done today with this previous little sample I made, with that one, the colour of the thread matches the colour of the fabric pretty closely. And when you have a slightly darker thread, it actually pushes the stippling into the background and makes it more obvious, the bits that are coming towards you. So that's another thing to think of. I wouldn't necessarily go quite this dark, but certainly try to have something that is a little bit darker than your fabric. So on a cream fabric, just have a darker cream thread. If you're doing something with a white fabric, perhaps you want to use a pale grey thread. It will help to push that stippling into the background and give the third dimension more oomph. Bindings that are going to go around curves must be cut on the bias. They won't bend if they're not cut on the bias, and you'll end up with all nasty sorts of pleaty bits. In my recent video about my story with Quilt As You Go, I showed this little quilt where I had covered the joins with braid. If I were making that quilt now, or a full-sized wedding ring quilt, I would 100% be covering these joins with lace or braid, probably lace. So check out the video there, and I'll see you next time.